Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming tonight. My name's Liz Crocker with the Chester Playhouse, and we're waiting for a couple of more people, but I think we're going to get underway. And those of you who've been part of these in conversations before will know that as we really get underway, we'll ask you to make sure your microphones are off and you can turn off your video. And then when we get to time for questions, I invite you to turn both on again. And we're not going to be a huge group, but we're going to be a really interesting group. And so we can have an intimate conversation. So I'm formally going to begin. And as I told you, I'm Liz Crocker from the Chester Playhouse. And as we always do, we always like to start with a land acknowledgement and to acknowledge that we are grateful to be living and working in Minnesquick in Mi'kma'ki, which is the unceded, unsurrendered land of the Mi'kmaq people. And we honor and uphold the treaties of peace and friendship that were signed many, many years ago, and would always like to pay our respects to the elders past and present. And we hope that we can all work together for reconciliation and deeper understanding on a daily basis. And I also want to formally thank everybody for coming. I know that we all have 1,000 different things that we could choose to do, and you're coming to be part of this warms our hearts. We're always excited about the guests we have. And I must also thank our government partners, the province of Nova Scotia and the Department of Canadian Heritage. And the Playhouse has a number of corporate partners, and certainly, especially during the time since the building burned and we are rebuilding again, we've been so grateful for all of that support. And to the individuals who support us all year round as well. So I'm going to welcome Andre Fenton to join us, and so you can see his face. And hi, Andre. Here we are. We get to talk, and Andre and I were chatting a little bit before we started, and I said, based on all of his work that I've read and from a conversation I've had with him, I have no doubt that he and I could talk together for hours, but of course we don't have hours. So what I want to do for everybody is give them a little snippet of some of your amazing accomplishments, even though you are, I did some math today, and I think you were about 1/3 of my age, so I'm very impressed. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about Andre, and then we're just going to go through his work, and I have some general questions, and I hope you come up with questions yourselves as we go along. So you've obviously signed up for this, so you know something about Andre, but I'm just going to remind you that he is not yet 30, and in fact has a couple of years before he turns 30. And he is already able to say that he is a poet, a spoken word artist, a screenwriter, and a writer of young adult novels, 3 to his credit so far, one of which is going to be transformed into a movie, and we'll talk about that. And he also has a commitment to working with youth and has run workshops at over 50 schools. And just recently, lucky you, Andre, you had to read thousands of short stories for the CBC short story competition. You were one of 16 judges that had to take these thousands of short stories and narrow them down to 29. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So I'm here to welcome you, Andre, and I'm in awe of what you've accomplished so far, and I'm so thrilled that you're willing to share that with us. And so yeah, I'd love us to just kind of start chronologically. I mean, you didn't start writing when you were a baby, but I think your first publication, if you will, was a book of self-published poems that you did yourself, 10 poems, called Ode to Teen Angst. And am I right that you created that when you were 17?
Ode to Teen Angst. So it's kind of it's definitely a confusing timeline with the self-published book, because I went to my first poetry slam when I was 18 years old, and I guess we can probably get into that story
Yeah,
in a
please.
bit. But Ode to Teen Angst was a self-published work that I wanted to create for a very, very long time. I would go to a bunch of these national slams, and people always ask me if I had merch, if I had any publications, and the answer was always no. And I guess wasn't very confident to see my work in print, outside of like my notebook or kind of a Word document. So I put together just kind of 10 of my favorite poems from my spoken word career, and kind of created Ode to Teen Angst, because at the time it was very, very angsty poetry. I think those poems were from the age of 17 to probably 21. So definitely definitely the most angsty part of my career. And I remember, I think the official book launch for Ode to Teen Angst happened in 2016, according to Facebook
Okay.
memories. That's what I comes up.
Yeah,
So
I can't remember my life, but Facebook does, yes.
Facebook always sends good reminders. So Ode to Teen Angst was kind of just a compilation of all of those poems. I guess I should probably just get into the poetry slam part. So growing up, I was always that kid that would spend so much time in the library reading, writing very outrageous stories, everything from sci-fis that take place in Halifax, until I got to grade 12. When I got to grade 12, I had a teacher in this course called African Canadian Literature. And once we got to our poetry unit, we weren't reading poetry from books, but he had brought in his TV, and we watched the first few seasons of Def Jam Poetry, which was this it definitely, I was always the shyest kid in the room. So this show spoke to me in a way like, yo, I gotta try this. So I was kind of putting together, how do I get into spoken word? I had no idea what I was doing. I could never speak in front of class. I was super anxiety driven. I was a dumpster fire every time I opened my mouth in front of people. So I started hanging out at this hip hop studio with a bunch of these rappers, until one day the former poet laureate Elle Jones came to the studio where she was telling about this poetry slam. I had no idea what a poetry slam was, but she drove me to it. It was over at Dartmouth High School. And I remember I had my little notebook. I got up to the mic, and I was kind of just speaking like this the entire time, just too afraid to make eye contact. It wasn't so bad, but I came third place in my first ever slam. But one thing I didn't know, that it was finals night for the Halifax Poetry Collective, which meant the top 5 poets that placed were going to Montreal to represent Halifax in nationals. So I sometimes joke and say that getting into spoken word was one of the best mistakes I've ever made. I was just happened to be at the right place at the right time. I just fell into this really cool thing. And I think for me, I was 18 years old at the time. I was a young man. I wasn't. I was still learning so much about myself, what it meant to be a man, what it meant to like really open your mind to different perspectives from different people. And I think what spoken word really taught me at that vital time in my life was the idea of empathy. Because when it comes down to everything, spoken word is such a vulnerable art form that like all you need is a microphone, all you need is a voice, and that's how you tell your story. So at a young age, it really, I met so many different writers from so many different walks of life that just opened my mind to so many different ideas and really instilled that empathy into me, which I don't think I would have gotten otherwise. And one thing I always stress to my youth that I'm working with is that having a foundation of poetry can sometimes make everything feel so much easier. Because I feel like with poetry, it's this big, intimidating, overwhelming thing where you feel like every line has to be this Pulitzer Prize winning idea. But one thing I love teaching the youth that I work with is that poetry is all around us. It's in the way that we speak. It's in our dialect. It's our friends. It's magic. It's so much. So I went to I think over the span of my years that I've competed, I went to 7 national slams across Canada, and every year poets would have merch at the merch table. They would have self-published books, anthologies, but I never really had any until I think it was 2016. I self-published my first chat book, which was called Ode to Teen Angst, which a picture of me on the front of the book that's super animated. And yeah, I was surprised with how far that chapbook went. And it was kind of like a stepping stone for me to jump into the publishing industry afterwards, because I knew that my main passion was always writing stories, especially coming of age stories. But I found like spoken word was that tool that I never thought of ever using, but I definitely fell in love with it, and it made me so much of a better writer, and it made me just learn so much about the world and the people in it, so I'm super.
Well, and you clearly went from the shy guy to having the confidence of standing up in front of all kinds of people and saying, I got a voice and you're going to hear it now.
Yeah.
So what was that transformation like for you? Did you kind of look in the mirror and go, who am I? I used to be shy and here I am.
Yeah, I always used to think, what's the worst that could happen? And the worst did happen every now and then. Sometimes you get up on stage and you forget your lines. I guess this is a story that I do love to tell. I think it was, so my first national event was in Montreal. My second national event was 2014, which was in Victoria, BC. I get up on stage at nationals. I forgot all of my lines of this poem. It's probably one of the most embarrassing things that's ever happened to me at that time. But thinking in retrospect, that's probably one of the best things that's ever happened to me, because it kind of threw all of that fear out the window and really taught me the idea of, sometimes failure can lead to growth. And it really just kind of put things into perspective and into such a different way. And I think with poetry in particular, that intimidation factor, just that seeing that mic on an empty stage is the most intimidating thing in the world. And just, I had the worst happen and it wasn't so bad.
So I'm curious to know whether that high school teacher who brought in the TV and showed you that series, whether he or she knows what you've done from that moment on.
Oh yeah, absolutely. His name is Malik Adams, Mr. Adams. He's in the acknowledgements of the summer between us. Yeah, we keep in touch here and there. I'm actually supposed to hopefully go to that school sometime. I hope before the year ends. If not, I'll definitely be there next year. But yeah, I find I speak at so many schools. I always just let them know I'm really not hard to find if you want me to.
Well, that's great. I know that there's at least one teacher in the audience tonight, and she and I have often talked about, the significant role teachers can play. We may not have the talent that you have, but sometimes we can do something that will ignite it. And so I'm glad you're in touch with him. But you didn't stay in the world of spoken word poetry forever. You then wrote a novel.
Yeah, my first
called
novel.
Your first novel called Worthy of Love. And if any of you who are on this call haven't read it, I would really recommend it. It's I felt like I got to know the central character, Adrian, and his sidekick, his friend Danny, and then this young woman he met who was his kind of his helping hand in that book, Mel. But can you tell people a little bit about the book for those who haven't read it?
Yeah, so Worthy of Love was a book I think I actually started writing when I was in my final year of high school. I always wanted to write a story about a young man struggling with an eating disorder. I was always a bigger guy growing up, and I felt like, those vulnerabilities, insecurities, I always wore my heart on my sleeves. And being able to, put that onto a page, into a novel, and just kind of put a person behind those thoughts and feelings, I felt was a very healing vehicle for others that they could just hop into. I know Worthy of Love. It was published when I was 23, so it first came out in 2018. So the 5-year anniversary is coming up. But yeah, it's about a young mixed race man named Adrian who grows up in Halifax, but is bullied a lot because of his weight, but is too shy to really speak up about it. So what he does is he joins a kickboxing gym, hoping to get into shape, but also to build that confidence. But he also falls into the more toxic ideas of what masculinity means, and not understanding that what he's putting himself through also impacts the people around him. So he has really great friends, like he has Donnie, he has Mel, he has Scarlett, but he's holding a big secret from them that is, well, not very healthy for him, but it also comes out into other parts of his life and other relationships. He the whole thing with Worthy of Love is that Mel is doing her hardest to help Adrian, but she doesn't realize that Adrian is hiding this really, really deep secret from her. And because of that, it really fractures their relationship for a bit. So Adrian has to walk that path of accountability and being better for the people in his life, and really kind of figure out, how to air out these toxic parts of masculinity, and to really just kind of walk and find the best of himself.
You just said, Andre, that you were a big kid yourself. Were you bullied as Adrian was bullied?
Yeah, absolutely. Kids are
Oh.
vicious, but I find these days I definitely feel like I definitely love myself these days, and
Right.
being able to pass these ideas of self-love to young people is very, very important. I think one of the most important school visits I've had was actually about Worthy of Love. I was over in Dartmouth speaking at a school over there, and a young man said to me that he finally felt like he read a book that was written for a kid like him. And it's kind of like those moments that just put everything into perspective, and just such a stark reminder of why this work is so important. Representation matters, and sure, it can be awkward to put yourself out there, but regardless of whatever you write, it's always going to fall into the hands of someone that needs to read it. So I definitely just
Yeah.
love putting all that out there.
Well, and I think you've said yourself that you wanted to write books that you could see yourself in, it was hard to find books that where you could see yourself. So, market sample of one, and now you've helped hundreds, if not thousands. But your next book was so different. So from Worthy of Love, this sort of tender young man who's bullied and trying to deal with that and figure himself out. And then your next book, Annika, the main character is a young woman whose name is Annika, except she doesn't like it, so she calls herself Anna. And she has an imaginary friend called Clay. And so take us on the journey from Worthy of Love to this amazing fantasy.
Yeah, absolutely. Annika was a novel I actually started developing while I was in film school. I took the Screen Arts program at NSCC, and it's funny how it kind of started off as a movie idea, but then turned into a book. But I always wanted to write a story about a young woman and her imaginary friend, and I feel like I feel like there's something about fantasy or magic realism that kind of speaks to me, that I find some type of comfort in, because it's super weird, but it's not weird enough that you can completely write it off. Like, it's just the right amount of weird. But there was a few things that I really wanted to really address in a book like Annika, and it was just kind of like two young people, one being an actual young person, one being an imaginary friend, that kind of grow up together, but they kind of have this conflict within their friendship, and really kind of figuring out, how do you repair this conflict? So I always felt like the best friendships are the ones that you go through conflict with, but solve it. But I remember when I was in film school, I started developing that idea, and shortly after I graduated film school, I actually lost my grandmother, and that was the first time in my life where I felt like such a big wave of grief hit, and it was a very, very profound experience in my life, because there's so many ways that grief can tackle someone. I had a very delayed sense of grief where every year my grandmother would call me on my birthday, and I had lost my birthday's in May, and I lost my grandmother in June, and I remember just being super emotionally just emotionally paused on everything. And I remember my birthday afterwards, I never got that phone call on my birthday. I made that realization that, like, I'm never going to get that phone call again. And grief is such an experience that's so unpredictable and can hit anybody at any time of their lives. And I knew Annika was kind of the right place to explore grief in such an open and honest way, where a character like Annika, who's not afraid to mess up, who's not afraid to be emotional or be needy from the people in her life, but she's also strong, she's also resilient, and she also doesn't take anything, she doesn't take disrespect from anyone. And I feel like having those traits while navigating this path of grief, I feel is super necessary. So the idea of Annika coming back to her hometown of Yarmouth was super important to me. I have a lot of family in Yarmouth, and so I remember me and my friend Jenna had went down to do some location scouting around that time to kind of really look at some really great locations. Cape Fortune is a recurring place in the book that's super nostalgic for me, but and definitely I did want that nostalgia to feel real. So being able to, go there after a lot of years and kind of revisiting so many places, I felt like was really good for me. And just kind of having this also be a love letter to some of these smaller towns in Nova Scotia is really good too. And just kind of seeing the magic in it. Usually one thing I really love is having kind of a lot of gigs just kind of out of town, because it just kind of reminds me of how draining the city can really be. So throughout the course of the book, Annika often reflects how in the city that she was often super aimless, she was unhappy, and she felt like she never had a really good sense of herself until she left. So I feel like with Annika, we kind of threw all that in there. And the dynamic between Annika and Clay is they're not good at first. Once Annika gets back, Clay's like, yo, you left me for 10 years of my life, and now you're back here because your grandfather passed away, and I bet you're probably going to leave me again. But what Annika's looking for most is belonging, and she doesn't realize that this little town, in on the South Shore of Nova Scotia has always been her home. She's always had family there, and she's always had people that were rooting for her and that love her. And I think kind of that's one of the those are definitely important things to have to navigate the stages of grief. And while I was writing that book, I was really kind of keeping track of those different stages, from denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. I didn't really want to like really label those parts, but they all come out in certain points of the book. And I had met Corey Bowles while I was in film school, and we always kind of just kept in touch with each other. I always admired his work so much, and I think it was in 2021 he had told me that he wanted to turn Annika into a feature film, and here I am thinking like I've first developed this story idea while I was in film school, but and I turned it into a novel, and now we're kind of coming full circle here.
Now, I'm just going to interrupt for a second, because not everybody on the call is going to know who Corey is. So he's worth a plug here, I think. So can you tell people who he is?
Yeah, absolutely. Corey Bowles is from Truro, Nova Scotia. He directs a lot of things. He was on Trailer Park Boys for a lot of years, doing some directing. He also played Corey. He made a feature film 2017 called Black Cop, which is really great. Co-producer at Fine Devil Films. He's directing so many different TV shows right now that I can't I don't know all of them, but definitely he's working on this really awesome FBI show right now. I see him posting about a lot. And before the call started, I seen that he was guest directing on another show on his Instagram story, just super cool. Corey is super busy, but he always makes space for me, and he's always been such a great mentor to have in my corner. And I'm just super excited to collaborate with another African Nova Scotian storyteller to, bring this fantasy novel to life, because I don't feel like it's just something very unique about a magic realism African Nova Scotian story being told, and Corey and I collaborating on this is such a fun opportunity. I'd admired his work for such a long time, and he's been such an open book about everything. And you know,
And now you have to be a screenwriter,
yeah,
a scriptwriter.
being a screenwriter. So I feel like, I'm finally using my film diploma for something, which is really, really great. Yeah, so
Any sense on the timing of when that might come to fruition? I mean, I know in the film world, making predictions is it's a losing game, but I'm going to ask anyway.
yeah, absolutely. I really hope we film next summer. That would be super cool. I think it would be the perfect time, but there's still so many things to consider with it. So I know Corey was very keen on shooting it here, which I'm very happy about. He's based in Toronto right now, so I'm sure he's very happy to be returning to Nova Scotia to work on this project eventually. But definitely still a lot to do in the process. I've been doing lots of writing with it, which has been really great to just reimagine a story I wrote in a different art form. I feel like I was talking to Tom Ryan about this on a panel that we did with the Writers Federation of Nova Scotia. We were doing a panel a few months back about adapting our novels to either film or TV. Tom's novels turning into a TV show, which is super, super exciting. And we were just kind of like really talking about how you're never going to fit everything in a novel into an adaptation, but just kind of really a lot of the things that just matter most. And there's a lot to consider, but I think the most important thing is to understand that that you really just have to be a student of your own story. Writing film is very different from writing novels. There's with novels, you can always kind of rely on your character's narrative, their internal thoughts, what they're thinking, what they're feeling, what they're smelling. But with screenwriting, you really have to focus on the show, don't tell part. So you can't rely on what your protagonist is thinking about all the time. You really just have to keep that momentum going, especially with one of the biggest things for me was making the realization that a lot of dialogue from books does not translate well to screen at all, because usually with dialogue in novels, that it's an extension of what the character is thinking or doing. But with writing dialogue for screen, usually the dialogue is just a tool to move that scene forward and to really just kind of maybe give folks a tad bit of information that wasn't really said out loud. But it's definitely super different. But I do love it because I find with writing, it's all just problem solving, it's all just a puzzle. I think a lot every time I start a scene, it's just, I have this many characters. These are the themes, these are the motives we have to push forward. How are we going to do it? And, I think with writing Annika, it gave me a really awesome opportunity to reimagine a lot of these scenes. I feel like so many folks put so much stress on writers to keep everything the exact same from a book to a film, but sometimes it's like the medium is its own art, so you really have to write in a way that will complement the story in that art form. So I wasn't afraid to take many risks, and I also just kind of felt like it'd be kind of boring to write the exact same story twice. So there is some differences from the film, the script. There is some differences in the script instead of the book there.
One of the things, and I don't want to give too much away for people who still have yet to read Annika and enter that world of magical realism, but I mentioned that there is an imaginary friend, Clay, and I will be so interested to see in the film how Clay materializes, because Clay is not always present. Clay materializes, and how that will be handled in a film. So maybe you could say something about that, and then I want to move on to The Summer Between Us.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm really excited to see how we do that too. I actually have no idea, but I'm really
Okay.
excited to see how
Okay.
we translate this being a imaginary friend to the screen. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm sure it's gonna be awesome.
Yeah. So, I'm hoping people on this call sort of already understand that you poet, spoken word person, a novel about a young man dealing with stuff, and then this magical realism. But then the next novel, which came out in 2022 and has won a number of awards, it's called The Summer Between Us, and we go back and re-meet the characters in Worthy of Love. And if you can tell us a little bit about that, and I think you're going to grace us with a reading from Worthy of, or Summer Between Us.
Yeah, absolutely. So The Summer Between Us is my newest book. Came out just about a year ago. I think Facebook Memories told me it was April 18th, 2022 when it came out. But when I finished writing Worthy of Love, I was so in love with those characters, Adrian and Mal, and I knew there was still so much story to tell with them. Although, you know, Worthy of Love is definitely its own book. It has its own beginning, middle, and end, but I just knew there was more to tell with Adrian and Mal. There was so much more of the relationship that I want to explore when they're
Now,
at
my sense in Worthy of Love is that Adrian's maybe grade 10ish,
yeah, grade 10. So
and now in The Summer Between Us, everybody's about to graduate.
yeah, everyone's about to graduate high school. So we kind of do a bit of a time jump. And the
Mhm.
reason why I wanted to do the time jump is because I feel like with it's not exactly a direct sequel. Like I don't think you need to read Worthy of Love to jump into The Summer Between Us. So I've been told by people that have only read The Summer Between Us. But definitely I knew that Adrian and Mel, I want to explore the relationship when they're more mature and jump into the idea of actual like young adulthood after they walk across the stage and get their high school diplomas and figure out what they want to do with the rest of their lives. I say so dramatically. I know one thing about Worthy of Love is that we never actually heard too much about Adrian's parents outside of a quick scene in the beginning of the book. And I felt like this was also an opportunity for Adrian to really dig deep into his relationship with his father, because he has this idea of manhood in the first book that he really kind of wonders where that stems from. And he has a father who is, well, you know, kind of like not the most emotionally mature grown man in the world. He's more of a go-getter, while Adrian is kind of more in tune with himself, trying to, you know, how do I really kind of honor the people around me. So Adrian and Mel are super serious in this book, but they both want different things in life. Mel wants to go on tour with her punk rock band, Brown, Black, and Infamous, while Adrian had a scholarship to go to Cape Breton University. They're legitimately going in different directions in the country, and but they're so in love. And with Mel and Mel's side of the story, her mother returns out of the blue, which she mentions in Worthy of Love is someone who abandoned her. So writing Mel's mother, I always wanted to do that, and that was always a character arc that I always wanted to prepare for, because Mel has so much mystery, but she also kind of deserves to have that solved. So what I really wanted to do is kind of write the story about our two protagonists dealing with their families, their dysfunctional families, and how Adrian's parents are so overbearing, and while Mel's parents are super emotionally distanced, and how that's kind of straining their relationship too. So there's definitely so much conflict between the two of them in this book about deciding what they want to do with the future, and that being the main question mark. But as the story progresses, Adrian's feeling a lot of pressure from his community as he's considered a mentor for a lot of young people. He works at a local library with a guy named Bobby doing an unpacking masculinity workshop series every week, while he's also a mentor for young people dealing with eating disorders too, that he never told his parents about. And he still kind of keeps that secret from his parents, as he's really just kind of too ashamed to open up about that part of himself in his interpersonal life. Mal wants to be unapologetic about who she is. She really wants to use her voice to make change. She really wants to just kind of jump in the punk scene and become a rock star. So yeah, this was a book I definitely wanted to write for such a long time, and I'm super glad I had that chance. And maybe I'll just kind of read the beginning of this,
Yes, please.
book here. Chapter 1, prom night. Everyone thinks prom night's like the movies. It's less dramatic, trust me. Once you get to the end of high school, you begin to realize there's no secret ending or definitive experience. It's multiple choice at best. And I can say more often than not, it's a whirlpool that makes you hold your breath. For the past 3 years, I've been stuck with the feeling of holding the breath I wanted anywhere but inside of my chest. If you're new to this group, let me introduce myself. My name is Adrian Carter. I'm 18 years old and I'm graduating high school with honors. I have great friends and experience that's similar to yours. When I was in grade 10, I developed an eating disorder. Guys with eating disorders, weird, right? Not really. It's more common than you think. One thing I learned is that because I had lost weight, it didn't mean my problems were solved. I was yet to grow into the best parts of myself, and I like to think that I'm closer than I was before, but the future is still to be determined. I'm lucky enough to be surrounded by supportive friends, to have had wonderful mentors, and to be part of groups like this. So as my first post as a mentor, I'm sorry, that still sounds weird to say. I'd like to leave you all with this. You are worthy of the love, healing, and support you seek. You always have been and always will be. Yours truly, Adrian. I hit entered and finally exhaled. Not a bad start. My moment of bliss was interrupted by a knock on the door. Adrian, your mother wants photos of you in your suit 5 minutes ago. Dad called into my room. Yeah, 1 minute. I put on the blazer and took a look in the mirror. I had to stop and take a second look. It felt weird. I never really had a suit before. Most of the time, clothes either felt too big or too small, and I think what freaked me out was knowing that this was a perfect fit. I said out loud. I looked back towards my laptop to see the post already getting some love. When I tried to peek at some replies, I heard the car horn outside. Damn, Donnie's here early. I shut the laptop. Don't worry about the pictures. I'll get tons tonight. I opened my door and saw Dad. Whoa, not so fast. Dad walked away. It wasn't that I was short. It was just that my dad towered over me. Look at you. I bet you must be surprised you can fit into one of these, huh? I sighed. I really wish he didn't say that. Besides the tie, he pointed. I could tell he was judging me because it was purple, even if he didn't say it. Dad, you don't have to. So, did you hear anything back from Cape Breton University? He started fixing my tie and making it look worse than before. No, I sighed again. I was waitlisted, remember? I remember. Dad sounded a little disappointed at the news, but hey, you never know. You could be next on the list if someone drops out. You gotta use that scholarship for something. My least favorite thing about grade 12 was the idea that we were suddenly supposed to know what we wanted to do with the rest of our lives. Spoiler alert, I didn't stop Dad from pressuring me into applying for a business administration program way back in November. And of course, programs like those fill up fast. I applied knowing full well I hit the wait list. What I hadn't expected was that somewhere along the way, I'd find something I was passionate about, working with youth. Last year, Mom had wanted me to help with a group for young men at the library where she works. I was hesitant at first, but next thing I knew, I started to enjoy it. Eventually, I built up the courage to apply for another program at Cape Breton University, Community Studies. Nothing really says maturity like becoming the person you needed when you were younger. That's the very beginning of the book here.
Yeah, thank you for that. And, again, I don't know if people on the call read books that are classified as young adult. I said to some friends of mine in an email I sent out I've always said that if you want to know what's going on in the worlds and minds and hearts of young people, you should read young adult literature, because people like you are capturing that. And so I have a question for you, and then I'm going to open it up to people on the call. But given what I was just saying about working with young people and understanding where they're coming from, you're not a teenager now. I mean, you're not old, but you're not a teenager, and yet you are working in schools with teenagers. How would you say teenagers as a group are doing? Has a lot changed in the 10 years from when you were 17, or are there just universal themes?
I would say teenagers are a lot more emotionally mature than what teenagers were like when I was
Wow.
in high school.
You can
I
imagine what
feel
it was like when I was a teenager then. I was a baby.
yeah, I feel like nowadays with the schools I work with, there's definitely more kind of just like community among the students. I know when I was in high school, everything felt so cliquey, everything felt so like, you know, everyone had their own groups of people. But I feel like these days, with a lot of the young people that I work with, they're definitely not afraid to put themselves out there. And you know, I'm 27, so I was in high school not that long ago, but I just feel like I'm not exactly sure what it is, but I just kind of feel that connectedness is just more apparent. There seems to be a lot less isolation
Mm,
between different different groups and different cliques of students these days. And yeah, yeah, you know, I feel like Gen Zs are definitely definitely know what they're doing right now, and it's very fun to be able to write fiction for them. It's definitely thinking a lot about a lot of the issues that young people face. I feel like kind of working with students is kind of like a cheat code for, for me to go in there and really kind of working with their anxieties. But no, it's also just really cool to help these young folks kind of gain that confidence through the art of poetry and spoken word, because for me it kind of all started there. And I always tell them it's like you can write whatever you want in life, but you can't write about anything unless you learn how to tell your own story first. So it's always important to explore that with them, and just be patient with them. Let them mess up as many times as they want, because there's always going to be growth at the end of that. You know, it's just kind of like this is a space where we can write about our awkward moments, our embarrassing moments, our amazing moments where we felt triumphed, our amazing moments where, you know, everything fell into place. All these parts of our lives are all part of us, and they all need to be told. You know, that's what I always stress to them.
mhm. I think I read somewhere that you had a teacher at one point who asked you, all the students in your class, to write a story a week, and it was meant to be a page a week. Although one weekend you came in and you'd written an 80-page story. Uh, but you know, obviously you've been interested in telling your own stories for a long time, and it's very exciting that you're encouraging other young people. So anybody on the call, if you want to just chime in with a question, this would be a great time to do it. You just need to turn your microphone on, and you can turn your video on if you want. I can see 3 people, but or you can chat in a question if you're feeling shy and you don't want to show your face. Any questions from anybody? Yes, Clara.
Thank you. Hi, Andre. We met
Hello.
at the Arts Nova Scotia evening.
Oh, we did. That was such
Yes.
a fun night.
You and I are standing side by side in the group picture. Andre, I didn't realize that evening you read some beautiful, beautiful poetry, and I didn't realize that you have 3 novels. That is absolutely wonderful. Congratulations. I'm wondering if you foresee in the near future writing beyond the young adults? Do you see yourself writing a novel that is for adults?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I definitely love YA, but I also don't want to be drained out by the genre either. So I am kind of in development on a new book right now, which I do kind of want to explore. I do kind of want to explore these ideas of kind of like, you know, kind of like life after the pandemic and what that looks like for so many different folks. And definitely you know, I feel I love YA, but I think at some point I did get a bit frustrated, like all the life lessons are here. You know, it's like there's like I think in the last 4 years I found out more about myself than I ever have before. And I definitely do want to explore you know, some of those stories about folks like in their late 20s and definitely beyond that. And you know, I'll definitely return to YA someday, but I do just want to take a small hiatus from it and really kind of you know, focus on adult fiction. We'll see when I'm super early into this project, so who knows when I'll come out. But yeah, definitely, absolutely, I do want to move beyond YA in a bit, but also come back to it eventually too.
Great question, Clara, and thanks, Andre. Anybody else want to jump in? Clara's been the first brave one. Anybody have a question? Lisa's turned on her microphone. Go for it.
I have a question about how you work in the schools. In other words, do you go just once, or do you actually counsel the kids, or do you read to them? You could tell I'm one of the teachers on the.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely I usually go I work with an organization called Unity Charity. So usually they'll kind of book me and another artist and we'll kind of do 6-week sessions. And I also do a ton of WITS visits as well with the Writers Federation of Nova Scotia. That's always super fun. So it all kind of depends, because I know with when I work with Unity, it's more of a spoken word based programming. But when I do the writers in the school, it is a bit more, probably a bit more based on fiction or whatever the youth really want to learn more about. But yeah.
What an inspiration you must be for the kids.
Oh, thank you.
They're very lucky.
I agree, Lisa. And you know, it's great that the Writers Federation has the program where authors can go into schools. It's a funded program and schools can apply. But the program where you can do these 6-week sessions through Unity, and maybe you should just say a little bit about what Unity is, what that organization does.
Yeah, so Unity is a hip hop based organization where I think the main art forms they focus on are breakdancing, MCing, graffiti, beatboxing, and spoken word poetry. So usually, depending on what the school wants, they usually reach out to Unity Charity. I think our contact is David Zink for Unity. And usually when they book us, they usually book us for 6 weeks. So we'll come in once a week for we'll come in usually like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and we'll do that day for six weeks long. And yeah, they're based in Toronto, but they had recently opened up shop here in Halifax, and I was asked to apply, and I did, and I've been working with them ever since. So I feel like this is this is the second year after COVID, we're back in schools, but for a long time we were just kind of doing it over Zooms with different classes. But usually me and Sarah Graham is the other poetry facilitator, where I think tomorrow we are working over in Bedford, which is going to be cool. And it definitely, it all kind of depends on what the students want. Some students just kind of want a place where they can chill out, kind of talk to their friends, write some poems, super low pressure. Some students want just straight up like performance workshopping, like they want to pick their favorite poems. They want to be like this awesome
Famous right away.
Yeah, they want to be famous right away. So we definitely aim for the best of our abilities to make that happen and kind of give them those tools and that knowledge. But yeah, if you're interested, I could send along some of that information to you as well.
So Andre, Lisa said, and I think she's right, that you must be a huge inspiration to the students that you work with. So my question is, who inspired you? Who are the key sparks for you?
Oh yeah, definitely Elle Jones was a big inspiration for me. She definitely, I feel like if I never met Elle Jones, I definitely probably wouldn't be where I am in the arts. And yeah, definitely she definitely was my first slam coach. She definitely helped me so much. You know, Rebecca Thomas is definitely a colleague of mine who helped me so much in the early parts of my career as well. We've been on so many different slam teams together. And there's definitely, you know, I always joke, if you could like travel across the country with someone and still be friends with them once you return, it's like, you know, that's a friend for life. But yeah, so I'd say I definitely Corey Bowles as well. He's been such a great mentor to me. And Writers Federation of Nova Scotia, Marilyn is amazing. She has done so much for my career. Linda's really great too. Bus Stop Theater, I love working here. I've been a big fan of them for such a long time and was like kind of like, oh wow, I was so excited that, you know, they wanted me to be part of the team. Yeah, just working with really great people is just helped me so much.
You know, it's interesting, both Elle Jones and Rebecca Thomas, we've been blessed to have had both of them in conversations, but they've both been poet laureates of Halifax. And I'm imagining one of these days, Andre Fenton's going to be poet laureate of Halifax. So everybody can wait for that, and we'll send out a banner press release. Anybody else have a question? So I have another question, which is going back to Annika, and you switched from a male voice in Worthy of Love with Adrian, and you came back to Adrian's voice in The Summer Between Us. What was it like writing a female voice?
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely there was a lot of things I didn't want to like assume, but I was thinking about a lot of dynamics of this story when working on the initial like novel treatment of it. I was thinking like, you know, I kind of for me, when I had lost my grandmother, it was the first time I felt that big wave of grief, and I kind of wanted to you know switch it around when it came to Annika. You know, definitely so many just so many amazing just women in my life have always just kind of supported me and kind of uplifted me, and in a way kind of writing Annika was a way of honoring that, even beyond the character of Annika. When you look at Tia, when you look at Jayla, when you look at Tanya, and just these characters of, you know, strong women that just aren't giving up on each other. And that's something, you know, I feel like I've definitely, you know, seen firsthand of strong folks that just never gave up on me. And it's something I really just wanted to envision for the novel as well, but also kind of making space, you know, for them to kind of like be vulnerable, to, you know, not have to wear that mask, and always having to be your best self, because grief is super messy. And I want to make space for that as well. But coming back to this idea of just finding belonging in their hometown of Yarmouth, and knowing that they can always rely on each other. So I guess when I was writing through the perspective of Annika, I was also just kind of thinking a lot about that as well. And it kind of really helped, definitely really helped, you know, get that ball rolling with it.
You know, and earlier on tonight, you said that writing Worthy of Love was very healing for you because you'd been a little bit of that guy. But I think you've also said that writing Annika was healing for you because your grandmother had died, and in the book, Annika's grandfather dies. And as you say, the book does embrace issues of grief. The book, Annika, also, Annika and her mom don't have a great relationship. And yet during the course of the book, they kind of find each other in a way that, in its own way, as a reader, I would say, felt healing. What was it like to write? Was it healing to write that relationship change?
Yeah, absolutely. I think definitely after writing Worthy of Love, I definitely realized there wasn't much kind of exploration of what parent dynamics look like. I know with writing Annika, it was it did open that door of having a parent who is distant. I know Annika and Jayla are very much alike, though Jayla, they're both kind of doing their own things, but Jayla's doing her own thing in a way that benefits Annika, and Annika might not understand that at the beginning. She's very much more focused on herself, as most teenagers are, but she doesn't realize that Jayla, being this famous artist and going to all these different places to help give Annika her best life, is a way to protect her, and Jayla not being honest about who Annika's father is also a way to protect her as well. And I guess in a way, I don't want to give away too much, but this is also an exploration of generational traumas as well. Sometimes we hide secrets because we're too afraid to bring them up, but we don't realize that this is going to create conflict. We don't realize when this is going to erupt and how it's going to impact our relationships in the moment. So I feel like writing Annika and Jayla's dynamic of two people that I think both characters are very, very likable, but they clash heads a lot because they're just kind of, they're not on the same wavelength in the beginning of the book, but they both love each other beyond their conflict.
Yeah. So thank you for that, Andre. As I listen to you talk about the characters in your books, you're talking about friends. You're talking about people that you know well, and of course you would know them well because you wrote them and created them. But you demonstrate such compassion and wisdom and empathy for all that they're going through, and I'm so grateful you've done that. We are at the magic hour of being almost 8 o'clock, 1 minute from 8 o'clock. So I just want to let everybody online know that this session's being recorded. And so if you want to see it again, you can. And if this In Conversation series has been a bit of an experiment, and we're taking a break for the summer, but we have Anne-Marie McDonald, author of Fall on Your Knees, lined up for the fall. So if there are other people that you would love to see in conversation through the Playhouse, please let us know. And also, for any of you who are going to be around on May 26th, there's an amazing show at the Chester Playhouse. It's a one-man show who thought he would, in a period of 10 months, knit 3 massive panels showing the Abrahamic faiths of Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, but it took him 15 years. And he's now created a show around this. It's called The Knitting Pilgrim. And he invites you to bring your own wool and your own knitting needles, but he'll bring woolen knitting needles. So he will teach you how to knit during the show. Anyway, it's going to be an amazing show. So please consider signing up for that on May 26th. So back to Andre. Andre, again, you've been so generous with your time, given all that you have on. An hour of your time is gold, but it's more than that you gave an hour of your time. You've given so much of yourself and your characters, and I listen to you as an older woman, and I feel better about the future of the world, because people like you are in it and doing the work that you are doing. So bless you and thank you. And thank everybody for being on the call.
Oh, thank you, everyone. This means the world to me. I definitely always love talking about the work, and just so much gratitude for everyone. Thank you so much for having me. And hopefully I would love to come back again in the future and talk again.
Okay. Okay. That's
Done.
good, Bridget. It's in there.
I'm writing that down right now.
Yeah. So good night, everybody. And please, as I said, let us know if there are other people that, other than having Andre back, other people that you would love to see in conversation. And take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.
Yes, bye.